everyone. Good morning, achievers and alumni of Junior Achievement. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I am going to provide a presentation. And when I do that, obviously for bandwidth issues, I will turn my video off. So I just wanted to make sure that I said good morning to everyone and showed my face. So I will now share my screen. Okay, great. So let me know when you can see the screen, please.
We can see it, Dr. Moxey.
Okay, great, excellent. All right, so good morning again, everyone, to you. My presentation is really talking about starting and growing a business. And so it's really the heart of entrepreneurship. And so we'll step through some very basic information here that's very fundamental, and every entrepreneur should keep in mind as they move their business together, move their business forward. So the first thing I'd like to do is define entrepreneurship. And so most people will say entrepreneurs is just simply a risk taker. It's a little bit more than that. So an entrepreneur is an individual who conceives a business idea, takes on the necessary financial, operational, market, technology, and reputational risk in order to make that business successful. Essentially, an entrepreneur is, in fact, a calculated risk taker. So they analyze data, analyze the opportunity, and essentially look at the best possible ways of being successful. So you're calculating your risk and you're going ahead and trying to exploit an opportunity. Anybody who's simply a risk taker is really just a daredevil, whereas entrepreneurs actually analyze what the opportunity looks like and really clearly defines the risk. Just a little bit of background about myself in terms of my entrepreneurial pursuits. I started my first technology startup company back in 1998 when I finished up my graduate degree. And so this was a digital animation software company. And at the time, computer gaming, digital animations was all in the rise, and companies wanted to produce these titles and content a lot quicker. And obviously, one of the biggest issues there was really lip synchronization and facial animation. So we formed this company to do that. And some of our customers included people like Disney, Activision, Valve Software, Treyarch. Some of the games people might know is Madden Football, the Spider-Man game, the Finding Nemo games. All of those, the lip synchronization and facial animation was done with our software. So we ended up with hundreds of customers that we sold the software to. Second business I did was really a consulting firm in 2002, did information technology and management consulting services. The third company, and that's still around, third company is integrated business solutions. We do software development and IT consulting. And then of course, started MobileAssist way back in 2009, along with my partner, Philip Simon. And so we're really a digital currency transaction platform and ecosystem. And so as you can see from this, I'm a serial entrepreneur. There's a couple of other businesses that I've had along the way that I've not included, but I've been involved in entrepreneurship all my life. And so let's talk about the key components of a successful venture. The first thing you need to do as an entrepreneur is really clearly define the business problem that you're addressing. That's number one. You have to figure out what the market needs, what that problem is, and also are they willing to pay you money to solve it? And that's what I call a business problem, because a problem that nobody's willing to pay for or they'd rather solve themselves, that really does not represent a market opportunity for you or business opportunity. So you really have to address or define a clear business problem for that exists or is emerging. The second thing you need to do as an entrepreneur is really define your product or service. And so now that you know what the problem is, the question is, how are you going to address that problem? Do you build a product in order to address that problem? Do you put together a service, or you do a solution, which is a combination of a product and a service? And so what you want to be able to do is, once clearly defining the problem, you need to say, what is my product, service, or solution? And what is my competitive advantage, my unique value proposition that I'm going to offer to the marketplace? One of the things that's extremely important to recognize is that where there is a true business opportunity, competition will exist. And so you will note that there will be others in the market trying to exploit that very same business opportunity. And so what you have to be able to do is put forth a product that's going to have a compelling value proposition and a competitive advantage, which allows you to now go ahead and get the attention of customers so that you can capture market share, drive revenues, and build your business. Third key component is really raising funding and building your team. And so once you've recognized the opportunity, once you have an idea and a thought process around what product or solution you're going to offer or service, now you have to assemble the team to do that. And the team may start with just yourself or yourself and a partner. And then you would then determine how best you address that opportunity. In terms of raising funding, it obviously starts with the entrepreneur. So you want to have some money that you can put into your business, and then very quickly that may expand to friends and family, that may expand to business loans, and eventually, as your business continues to grow, that may expand to venture capital as you move forward. But funding is extremely important for your business. So you want to make sure that you have adequate funding to get started, and you have a pathway in order to continue to fund your business. One of the ideal solutions would be is to fund your business through your customers. And that's a combination of self-funding and bootstrapping. So as you bring on new customers, they pay you money, you're now able to fund the business growth. That's really good to grow that organically. However, in some competitive market spaces, you've got to grow quickly. And in order to do that, you need to raise funds from other sources. The fourth key component is to pay attention to the market and being able to manage your growth. It is very important that as a market develops and matures, there's certain dynamics and things that change all the time. When you're a startup company, you have to recognize that you need to be able to recognize and adapt to these changes. The other thing that also happens is that when you come to the market with a new product or service, there are customers that will give you feedback on that. And so you need to be able to listen to your customers and be able to incorporate their feedback, especially feedback that adds value to your product and actually strengthens your value proposition. You want to be able to incorporate those things. The other thing that's important is also bringing on partners. Every company, as you grow, you're going to need partners to allow you to really be able to exploit opportunities. And so it's very important to keep in mind, who potential partners may be, have those discussions, work out those deals, and be able to offer increased value to your products that your partners may be able to deliver for you as well. Then you also want to keep an eye on your competitors. You want to understand what it is they're doing, any successes that they may be having, any ways in which they're looking to reach the market that you need to look at and better understand how you can probably reshape your compelling value proposition. You want to keep an eye on the competitors as well. And that keeps everybody sharp, because as the market grows and the market moves in certain directions, you want to be able to respond quickly to those opportunities as well. And so a couple of things that I want you to keep in mind here as an entrepreneur. The first thing is that entrepreneurship is not linear. And what do I mean by that? It doesn't move in a straight line, meaning that you complete a certain sequence of events in direct sequence, and that's how it always goes. It doesn't work that way. Now, entrepreneurship is filled with many, many different twisted turns. There are times where you may have certain issues that you didn't expect. There are times when things may fall in your lap that you didn't expect. And so you have to be able to say that I'm going to be ready for the unexpected. And note that things may not happen in the time that you think they are. They should happen, but rather there are things that sort of naturally and dynamically come together. And so always keep that in mind, that as an entrepreneur, even if things aren't happening in the sequences or the sequence that you expect them to, don't think that that's a failure. That's typically how things work. And so what you want to do is continue to stick with what you're trying to do, continue to hear the voice of the customer, look at the market, be sharp with respect to what's going on within the competitive matrix that you participate in, so that you can make the adjustments accordingly. The next thing that you want to keep in mind is that you need to find the best available people for your organization. So as your organization grows, especially when you're small, it's very important to have the right team members on board, because a team member that doesn't quite fit, that can't quite deliver, sometimes can sink your organization. Sometimes also there's a partner that you don't quite get along with, and it doesn't really work for you as well. And so it's very important that as you grow, you find the right people that can help you at the stages and the phases of your business. And ideally, what would be great is you find people who really can grow and learn with your company. So as you grow, they're growing, they're continuing to contribute, they're continuing to play a role in the organization. Keeping in mind too that you may begin to grow very, very quickly, where you have to bring in a lot more experienced talent just to jumpstart where you are. But keep those things in mind as an entrepreneur. The third thing that you want to keep in mind is that you're always going to need more money than you think. Ideally, when people sit down and write a business plan, they think about, hey, month one, I'm going to do this, month two, month three, month four, and by month 10, I'm going to be profitable or cash flow positive or breaking even. It doesn't always work that way. And so you always want to have additional cash somewhere on the sideline. You always want to be cultivating those relationships where you can get cash, whether that's a banking relationship, whether that's a friend and family, whether that's a venture capitalist or angel investor. You always want to, especially if you are the founder, the CEO, your role is to make sure that you have access to cash and capital at all times, because you're always going to need it until the company is really moving forward and generating its own profits. That always takes longer than you would expect. The fourth thing that you want to keep in mind is that you need to always listen to your customers in the market. Get that customer feedback, especially if you're in an innovative industry that's continuing to be dynamic in terms of product offerings, services, technology, incorporations, and integration. You want to keep those things in mind. The one thing to look at is that a company that starts out with a particular product, very rarely does that company become successful with a successful exit with that same product. There's always things that are changing. There's always different dynamics that you have to be aware of. And so it's one of those things where you have to make sure that you're there, you have a mindset rather, where you can adapt and innovate, because the market's always changing, customer demands are changing, competitive landscapes are changing. When you go into various markets, those things then can represent a challenge for you. And so you always want to keep those things in mind, that you've got to be nimble and you've got to be innovative as an entrepreneur. And so summary here, entrepreneurs, again, are calculated risk takers. They're just not risk takers. They're not daredevils. You have to assess the situation. You have to analyze the data, look at the opportunity, and make hard decisions as to whether or not there truly is a business opportunity. One thing that's extremely important to get started is you have to define the business problem you're addressing. And so one of the first questions that an investor will always ask an entrepreneur is, what problem are you addressing? What's the business problem? How big is that problem? Meaning, how many people have it? What's their demographic and psychographic makeup and profiles? And can you really build a business around it? Will the market pay for that particular solution in order to address the problem? The other thing that's important is clearly defining your product, service, or solution to address the problem. What's your compelling value proposition? One of the things that investors used to ask me is, will the dog eat the dog food? Is it compelling enough for somebody to choose your product or service over a competitor? Of course, if you want to grow a company, third thing to keep in mind is you have to build a strong and dynamic team, because you want to make sure that as you grow as a company, when you start up, you're going to grow pretty quickly. So you want to make sure the team members that are around you can execute, they can adapt, and they can innovate. Because especially if you're in a technology sector, those things happen all the time. Changes happen all the time. You have to have people who have the ability to do that, if you will, as well. And then last but not least is prepared to address changing market dynamics. And so things are changing all the time, especially if you're in the technology space. You have to recognize that you have to keep aware of those things, and you have to make various judgments on whether or not you're going to adapt in order to take advantage of an opportunity, if you will, as well, if that's consistent with what you're doing from a core perspective with regards to your business venture. And so that's it in summary. Of course, I'm certainly open for questions. I know I only have had 20 minutes, so I just wanted to give a quick presentation there, and I can certainly take any questions that anybody would have at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Moxey. Just a question that came in through the chat. How much or what percentage should I invest in with my startup costs in market research?
Early on, market research, again, I would tell people all the time, when you do this, especially if you're the entrepreneur, do the market research yourself to the extent that you have certain abilities to really understand the market. And so some people may want to go and get a market research firm and spend a heck of a lot of money doing that. And sometimes it's very tough for them for you as an entrepreneur to really truly articulate what the problem is that you're trying to address to really get an analysis. So I would encourage everybody, if you're going to do any market research, you spend your time and spend very little money. Now, there may be some data sources that you may have to buy or get access to and spend some little bit of money on that. But for the most part, getting started as the entrepreneur, you want to really study the market and understand the market as best you can yourself. And so really minimize early on spending a whole lot of money on market research professionals. So there's a lot of things you can do from basically talking to potential customers, looking at demographic information in terms of your target market segments, really looking at who the competitors are in that space, looking at who the other startup companies are in that space. So as that founder, you really need to understand it yourself. So I would say invest as much of your time as you possibly can on the initial market research.
Okay, Dr. Moxey, thank you. And we have another question from the chat. How much capital do I need to start a restaurant business? Excuse me. Should I double the amount?
Yeah, restaurant business is very capital intensive. So the question is, how do you want to start? And if you have the capital to start it, to invest $1 million in a restaurant, okay, fine, you can go ahead and do that. But let's say if you're coming to market and you have a certain way of how you prepare foods or flavors, things of that nature. What I've seen most people do, especially people who started our restaurants, is they maybe start with a catering business and try to get clientele that way and really work out their menu and what their special twist is in terms of what they're doing. And then eventually sort of move up. Because if you're talking about investing, let's say, $250,000 in a restaurant, and you haven't really, the public or your target market hasn't really gotten a flavor for your food and what you serve and the kind of restaurant it is, then that may be a very, very high risk investment for you because you don't know if folks are going to come and patronize you. So my suggestion would be start out small initially, really build your clientele. And then once you've determined that, yes, people understand who I am, they know who I am, I've got something that's a unique flavor that people will come to over and over again, then you can start making that investment. But I would not, coming right out the gate, especially if no one knows who you are, make that significant investment in a restaurant.
Okay, and another question that came directly into my chat is, should I pay myself immediately or should I wait until I make a profit?
You should wait. I mean, obviously it depends. And so I've been down this road quite a number of times. And so what I've done personally is that I would put a portion of my savings or the money that I had into my business. And then the remaining portion of it, obviously I would keep for myself to kind of cover myself. Because as you bring on additional employees, new employees, you're going to have to pay them because obviously your vision for the business is not necessarily theirs. They're an employee for the most part who want to be a part of a startup, who are excited about those kinds of things, but they have obligations that you need to cover. So the bottom line is that if you can afford and you have the cash to pay yourself, do that. But always know that if cash runs low, you're going to be the one who will not take a salary that week or that month, and you're going to have to pay your workers. And so even if you do start paying yourself, recognize that as cash flow becomes a challenge, you're going to have to basically not pay yourself until the business can afford it.
Okay, Dr. Moxey, thank you so much. I think that was a lot of great information for budding entrepreneurs and persons that are looking or have started a business and want to take some of that advice to continue. We do have one other question, and this will have to be our last question before we move on. But how do you find investors?
Yes, locally, there are a number of investment groups and investment clubs. And so a lot of this in terms of in the Bahamas is really word of mouth. I mean, there are no quote unquote venture capital funds, if you will, that are there that are non-governmental that I know about. And so again, there's resources from the Bahamas Venture Capital Fund, there's a Small Business Development Center, and then there are individual investors as well. And so really it's about networking, and that's extremely important. You get into business for yourself, you're an entrepreneur, you have to network. You have to find people who are in the industry that you're in. You have to find people who may be interested in the kind of solution that you're putting forth. And it's all about networking, 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 and relationships.
Thank you, Dr. Moxey. Really appreciate your input this morning.